Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin, and this is Life, Liberty, and Levin Saturday. Welcome. You know, it's an amazing thing when these 300, 400, 500-page reports or these omnibus bills come out, how quickly people can tell us what's in it. They can't tell us what's in it that quickly. They're not speed readers. What they do is they look for summaries, or they look for title heads, or they look for lines here and there in the document. Well, I've had time to read this document that was put out by Special Counsel Hur, and I've concluded something a little bit differently. That Mr. Hur would never have prosecuted Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. This report is filled with damning indictments against Joe Biden, multiple violations of the Espionage Act, one after another, a black and white case. And yet throughout the report, it's schizophrenic. They said, look at this, but we wouldn't charge him because he's an imbecile. Oh, we wouldn't charge him because, we don't have this. We wouldn't charge him. If only Donald Trump had such a prosecutor. But let's take some time, as we like to do on this program. Here's the report. I've read it all, and there we go. I want to go to relevant parts that you have not heard, given the nature of broadcasting, but this show, we do things a little differently. Right there in the beginning. Our investigation uncovered evidence that President Biden willfully retained and disclosed classified materials. He lied about this the other night. He said he didn't, because he's a liar. He's a serial liar. Apart from the mental problems, he's got character problems. Disclosed classified materials after his vice presidency when he was a private citizen. That is a crime. These materials included 1, marked classified documents about military and foreign policy in Afghanistan. 2, notebooks containing Mr. Biden's handwritten entries about issues of national security and foreign policy implicating sensitive intelligence sources and methods. That is a crime. FBI agents recovered these materials from the garage, offices, and basement, and the den of Mr. Biden's Wilmington, Delaware home. That is a crime. However, for the reasons summarized below, we conclude that the evidence does not establish Mr. Biden's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Really? Well, we have a prosecutor's office filled with Helen Kellers, I guess. Biden regularly wrote notes by hand in notebooks. Some of these notes related to classified subjects, including the president's daily brief and National Security Council meetings, and some of the notes are themselves classified. Mr. Biden wrote in 2007 and 2017 memoirs with the help of a ghostwriter. In a recorded conversation with his ghostwriter in February 2017, about a month after he left office, Mr. Biden said, while referencing his 2009 Thanksgiving memo, that he had just found all the classified stuff downstairs. Wait a minute. He said that in 2017. By my calculation, that's 7 years ago. So there he is, President of the United States. He sees what they're doing to Trump. He knows he has classified information downstairs. Does he say, hey, everybody, I've got information here? Does he call in the Attorney General, the FBI, anybody? No. But he's been very cooperative once they found the incriminating information. At the time, he was renting a home in Virginia where he met his ghostwriter to work on a second memoir. Downstairs from where they met with Mr. Biden's office, in his office, where he stored his papers. He moved out of the Virginia home in 2019, consolidating his belongings in Delaware, where FBI agents later found marked classified documents about the Afghanistan troop surge in his garage. Mr. Smith, what do you think about this? I'm talking to you, Jackie. What do you think about this? Then they put here, several defenses are likely to create reasonable doubt as to such charges. Now, ladies and gentlemen, honestly, I've never read that in any prosecutorial document in my life. Now, this is a report. It's not a charging document, obviously, but he has several defenses that he can raise. Well, if you think he broke the law, which he clearly did, then he can raise the several defenses on his own. I've never seen a government raise the charges and then raise the defenses and then conclude, well, in the end, no jury would find him guilty anyway. And besides, we don't even think we can prosecute or charge a sitting president. Now, what do you think Jack Smith would do with this information? You'd think he'd honor the memo from the Department of Justice that you can't indict a sitting president. He's broken through attorney-client privilege barriers. He's broken through executive privilege barriers. He's broken through immunity barriers. He could care less. This guy, very concerned. They go on. We've also considered that at trial, Mr. Biden would likely present himself to a jury, and this is where the media is jumping all over, and it's true, but it's not the only thing, as he did during our interview of him as a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. Gee, we've never sent such men to prison, have we? Prison's filled with people like this. Based on our direct interactions with and observations of him, he's someone for whom many jurors will want to identify reasonable doubt. Who writes a report like this? Is this guy a psychiatrist, or is he a prosecutor? It would be difficult to convince a jury that they could convict him, by then a former president well into his 80s, of a serious felony that requires a mental state of willfulness. You know what this is? This is a cover-up. They lay out all this factual information, then they say, no jury in their right mind. I mean, we've got an imbecile, we've got a guy, you can't prove intent, even though he willfully did these things. Let's see, willfulness and intent seems like a synonym to me. Notebooks containing classified information. FBI agents recovered from unlocked drawers in the office and basement den of Mr. Biden's Delaware home a set of notebooks he used as vice president. Evidence shows that he knew the notebooks contained classified information. Willful and knowledge. Those are pretty strong elements of a crime, don't you think? Some evidence also suggests Mr. Biden knew he could not keep classified handwritten notes. Wow, malice of forethought. At home, after leaving office, Mr. Biden, who had decades of experience with classified information, was deeply familiar with the measures taken to safeguard classified information and the need for those measures to prevent harm to national security. Wow. Asked about reports that former President Trump had kept classified documents at his own home, Mr. Biden wondered how, quote, anyone could be that irresponsible, unquote, and voiced concern about, quote, what data was in there that may compromise sources and methods. Wow. While vice president, he kept his notebooks in the White House safe for a time, in contrast with his decision after leaving office to keep them at home in an unlocked drawer. Pretty damning, don't you think? I think a first-year prosecutor would know what to do with this information. But we also consider whether Mr. Biden willfully disclosed national defense information to his ghostwriter by reading aloud certain classified notebook passages to the ghostwriter nearby verbatim on at least 3 occasions. Mr. Biden should have known that by reading his unfiltered notes about classified meetings in the Situation Room, that he risked sharing classified information with his ghostwriter. But the evidence does not show that when Mr. Biden shared specific passages with his ghostwriter, Mr. Biden knew the passages were classified and intended to share classified information. That is what we call in Philadelphia BS. They just told us he's been around forever. They just told us he knew about classification requirements. They just told us his notes contained classified information, but we're not sure if he knew it contained classified information or if he was passing it along. It's a cover-up. They lay it out, and then they pull the rug from it. It's like Comey. On the facts of this case, they go on, the fundamental interests of society do not require criminal charges against Mr. Biden. For this additional reason, applying the principles of federal prosecution set forth in the Justice Manual, we decline to prosecute for the good of the country. Wow. I didn't read any of this in any of Jack Smith's leaks to the New York Times or the Washington Post or his formal documents for the good of the country. The practices of retaining classified material in unsecured locations and reading classified material to one's ghostwriter present serious risks to national security, given the vulnerability of extraordinarily sensitive information to loss or compromise to America's adversaries. The department routinely highlights such risks when pursuing classified mishandling prosecutions. But addressing those risks through criminal charges, the only means available to this department, this office, is not the proper remedy here. FBI recovered additional marked classified documents at the Penn Biden Center, elsewhere in Mr. Biden's Delaware home, and in collections of his Senate papers at the University of Delaware. But the evidence suggests Mr. Biden did not willfully retain these documents. Didn't they just say he willfully retained documents? Did I not read this from the beginning of the of these documents? Willfully, knowingly, shared them. You go to page 12. He didn't willfully retain these documents, and they could plausibly have been brought to these locations by mistake. You know what's funny about the Espionage Act? It doesn't care if you made a mistake. It's gross negligence. Ooh. Mr. Biden's ghostwriter's destruction of evidence. Oh, do tell. After learning of the special counsel's appointment in this matter, Mr. Biden's ghostwriter deleted audio recordings he'd created of his discussions with Mr. Biden during the writing of Mr. Biden's 2017 memoir. The recordings had significant evidentiary value. After telling the special counsel's office what he had done, the ghostwriter turned over his computer and external hard drive and consented to their search. But why did he destroy them? Doesn't tell us. Based on the FBI's analysis, it appears the FBI recovered all deleted audio files relating to the memoir, though portions of a few of the files appear to be missing, which is possible when forensic tools are used to recover deleted files. So why did he delete them? And then, of course, he turns over whatever he has later. The ghostwriter kept and did not delete or attempt to delete his near verbatim transcripts of the recordings and produced those transcripts to us, including for each of the incomplete recovered files. What we're finding here is that once an investigation is started and people start to find out, it's like Joe Biden. I'm cooperating. Wait a minute, you stole documents out of the Senate SCIF. Yes, but as soon as I found out about it, I started cooperating. That's like, yes, I shot that guy, but you know what? I'm cooperating now. Come on. Well, the ghostwriter admitted that he deleted the recordings after he learned of the special counsel's investigation. Oh, there you go. The evidence falls short of proving beyond a reasonable doubt that he intended to impede an investigation, which is the intent required by law. In 2010, the executive secretariat team around Biden raised concerns about the number of classified briefing books that Biden had not returned, and the fact that even when they were returned, some of the content was missing. Ooh. These concerns were raised with Hogan, who was the counsel to the vice president, as well as Mr. Biden's personal aide and military aides. Emails indicate that the executive secretary team alerted Hogan, the attorney, to the issue at least in June 2010, when nearly 30 of the classified briefing books from the first 6 months of 2010 were outstanding, a.k.a. missing. And in August 2010, when Mr. Biden failed to return top secret, sensitive, compartmented information, contents of a classified briefing book that he had received during a trip to the Hamptons in New York. I thought he was Joe from Scranton. Well, I guess so. We were unable to determine whether these materials were ever recovered. Are you kidding me? Although they were likely found and disposed of by military aides and naval enlisted aides, they have no idea where those materials went. That's a crime. During the Obama administration, Mr. Biden's staff regularly collected and reviewed his note cards to determine if they contained classified information so they could eventually be archived as presidential records. At the end of the administration, Mr. Biden's staff arranged for him to store most of this classified note card information, which contained notes on the president's daily brief, that's top secret, and other classified information in a SCIF at the National Archives. In contrast, Mr. Biden held his notebooks close, and his staff did not review them. After the administration, private citizen Biden brought his notebooks home with him, stored them in unsecured locations that were not authorized to store classified information, even though the notebooks, like the note cards, contained classified information. More in the report. Mr. Biden wanted to take copies of his note cards when he left office to help write his book. When conceiving of and writing the book, Mr. Biden worked with a ghostwriter, Mark Zwantzer. In 2016, Mr. Zwantzer reached out to Mr. Biden's staff, requested help with locating Mr. Biden's journals and notes that would be helpful in writing a book. As he approached the end of his vice presidency, Biden sought to keep copies of his note cards and other records for use in the book writing process. According to a staffer involved in the project, Biden wanted to take copies of the notes, quote, so that he didn't have to go to the National Archives every day to help write his book. In late September 2016, Zwantzer, the ghostwriter, emailed Mr. Biden's chief of staff to schedule an interview with Mr. Biden. He said he wanted to cover very specific topics and timeframes and said he would tell you exactly what ground, time, period I want to cover, as the vice president could have relevant notes and diaries when he talks to him. This is the kicker. The executive secretary, her name is Bakatiuk. She did not recall ever advising Mr. Biden that he could retain classified notes after his term in office, and said it was not her role to advise the vice president about classified record handling. Based on her own training, she knew that classified materials were supposed to be stored in a secure facility. Now get this. Mr. Biden appeared to reference those note cards, the issued during a recorded interview with his ghostwriter on October 10, 2016, the same time period during which his staff were discussing and arranging the secure storage of his classified note cards. At the time, Mr. Biden was reading aloud from his, quote, foreign policy, unquote, notebook, including reading notes from meetings in the Situation Room. Mr. Biden's notebooks were separate from his note cards, though he often took similar and similarly classified notes in each. Referring to his foreign policy notebook, Mr. Biden added, quote, they didn't even know I have this. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you have specific intent, you have willfulness, you have confessions. It's documented, you have eyewitnesses. And they choose not to charge him. The issue of whether you can charge a sitting president aside, they choose not to charge him. And they charge Donald Trump with a setup on obstruction, which is outrageous. And the Espionage Act, I would argue, because the Constitution trumps a statute, doesn't even apply to a sitting president when he's taking documents with him. But he didn't declassify. Hello, he's the president of the United States. By his action, he took the document with him. But why would you even bring it to the point of charging a former president of the United States? A former president of the United States. Biden was never president of the United States. He's not the executive branch. The president is. Hillary Clinton's not the executive branch. She was Secretary of State. They have felonies all over them under the Espionage Act, and neither were charged. This is a cover-up. For all the information that's provided, it goes on and on and on saying that we would never charge this, a jury would never convict. And besides, this isn't Donald Trump. Donald Trump obstructed. Joe Biden didn't obstruct just because he held all this information, knowingly violated the law, conferred information to a ghostwriter, and on and on and on. It's not the same thing. You're right. Because what Joe Biden did is 1,000 times worse.
Want to see more Mark Levin? Go to LevinTV.com and subscribe now.